In this presentation, we've talked about grants.gov, SAM.gov, and the importance of being current, being compliant, and having an active account in each of those entities. And in this breakout, we just want to underscore the importance of proper registration and compliance, and how missing the deadlines on that pre-application step can unfortunately submarine your grant application from the very get, and talk about how proper registration is crucial and the importance of maintaining that, and just some best practices around keeping that together on top of everything else you have to manage at your nonprofit. Asia, have you experienced this, like having to work through the registrations, keeping compliant with some of the nonprofits you work with?
For sure. So specifically speaking to grants.gov, what I've seen that has been very beneficial for nonprofits is making sure that you're allocating certain tasks within your team so that folks are able to track and monitor some of those federal grant opportunities that are on grants.gov. But also, I've seen an approach used with a former client of mine that I think nonprofits really could benefit from duplicating, which is when they have multiple members of their staff working on a grant application, what they'll do is they'll copy and paste some of the information from grants.gov into a shareable document that everyone is able to contribute so that they are making sure that they're meeting those deadlines. Because one of those impact moments as it relates to federal grant opportunities is those deadlines, really being mindful that you have enough time to not only do the grant application or put together the proposal, but also making sure you have your own internal auditing process.
100%. I totally agree. Where, we talked about this in keeping track of grant deadlines, whether it's like an Excel spreadsheet or Salesforce, right sizing whatever best way there is to kind of share that content amongst your staff. And I think making sure that you have multiple hands on that, or just multiple eyes, where if someone's sick, we used to call it at the nonprofit I was at, like the get hit by the bus clause. So if someone gets hit by a bus, you're not losing everything. And similar to that, keeping track of the grant applications, grant information, like you had said, for grants.gov, other platforms. But maybe thinking about a generic email address, like a grants@yourorganization.org, so that this login information, you have one email that's general, can be forwarded to multiple folks. If people leave, that information doesn't leave with them. I've had the situation with clients where one person had moved on and we have to call them up asking them to send the two-factor authentication code within 5 minutes to get into SAM.gov, which not best practice. I do not recommend that. But having multiple people and maybe a generic email address be the login information is a great way to kind of mitigate against that, making sure it's sustainable and that it doesn't come down to one person to apply. But
absolutely, because it's those federal regulations that you really, as it relates to compliance, that nonprofits really want to keep in mind to not only accustom yourself to the practice of being on top and ahead of the game, but also making sure that you're being very observant with some of those regulations that really can impact your pre-application strategy.
100%. Some of the, just getting into SAM.gov, getting into grants.gov, sometimes there's a delay. So you always want to make sure you take care of that first and foremost. The worst thing is that you find a great application, you get into it, you forget to just get registered on the site, and then the timeline to get compliant is beyond how much time you have to complete the grant. So just being mindful, and especially with government applications, taking a look at all of the particulars means that you're prepared, you have a game plan, and you can work toward that submission date, getting everything done. This really underscores a lot of what we've talked about so far in this course, that working with other folks within your organization, activating staff, activating board members, so it's not, the onus isn't just all on one person, and making sure that you are cognizant of deadlines. And a grant calendar should include this regulation, this compliance component, so that you're always ready, things don't catch you by surprise, and you have enough buffer time where if you need to get closer to that submission date, you do have the time to revise. But just getting the strongest applications you can out there, getting as many as you can out there, and we're going to expand on this theme more as we get into future presentations.